Hi, this is JP LaForce from Studio JPEG. In this video, I'm going to be doing a review of this nice lens here, which is the Canon 400mm f5.6L, and it does not have image stabilization, which I guess I'll jump right into it. I think this is the biggest downside of this lens, is it does not have image stabilization. But if you're taking pictures of birds and things which move really quickly, it's not so much of an issue, and mostly because if I'm taking pictures of birds, I'm gonna need a shutter speed of at least 1/2000th of a second, sometimes all the way to 1/4000th of a second. So even if I put this with a 2x teleconverter, that's still only 800 millimeters. And if you're using shutter speeds of 2000 to 4000th of a second, that's really not an issue. You're not going to see blurry images just because of that. However, when it comes to video, you definitely have to put it on a very solid tripod, and there's just no other way around it. When you're zoomed in at 400mm or all the way to 800mm with a 2x teleconverter, just a tiny little bit of vibration is going to show up in the video quite a lot. So that's one thing to be careful with this lens. Other than that, the image quality is really amazing. This is the sharpest lens which I've tried so far. It's extremely sharp, even wide open at 5.6. I don't really see a reason to stop it down at f8, f11 as I do with my other telephoto lenses. So the aperture is less generous with a minimum aperture or max aperture of 5.6, but it does compensate a bit for it by not having to use the f8 and f11 apertures as I do with my other teleconverters. One thing that people either like or hate is the lens hood is actually built into it. So you just twist it, and then you twist it into place, and then you untwist it, and sometimes I don't know if it's this copy, but sometimes it's kind of hard to untwist it into place, as you can see right now. But yeah, I'm not too sure that I like that mechanism that much. As I say, sometimes it's hard to get it back into place and lock it as it's supposed to be. But after a while, you are able to put it back into place and all that. The cap is just a regular Canon cap that you clip like this. And another thing that jumps right at you when you see it is the build quality of this thing. This is made of very solid metal. This is my first L lens of the white series that I try out, so I'm used to having the plastic lenses. Sometimes, like with the Tamron, you have very high quality plastics, and even some Canon lenses have those high quality plastics too. But there's something that with this really solid metal thing, and again, the tripod mount here is really solid metal. This is something that probably could hold hundreds and hundreds of pounds, and just putting this on this lens is just way overkill. But it does give a feeling of that this lens, in terms of build quality, is absolutely overkill. And that means that if you invest a lot of money in those Canon white lenses, it means they're gonna last for a really long time. I do have confidence that if there would be a little accident with this, if you bump it somewhere or something like that, you're probably not even gonna notice it. It would be quite hard to dent this lens. It seems absolutely solid though. The other thing is on the side here, you have you have two switches. So you have the autofocus on off, and you have the focus limiter. So you can limit it to focus from 3.5 meters to infinity or 8.5 meters to infinity. So because this lens only focuses as close as 3.5 meters, this is really not a macro lens. So you can still, get close-up shots a little bit, but this is probably the least macro lens that I've tried so far. But if you have something really far away, it does a great job at bringing it closer. And I had fun with the autofocus with this lens, and it's just blazing fast. You focus and immediately the focus is done. There's zero hesitation. I used it with the Canon 6D, and immediately, as soon as you start to focus, it's focused. The image is ready to take, so that's really great. The only thing though is if you attach it even to the 1.4x teleconverter, my Canon 6D was not able to autofocus with it, except if I use the live view mode. In live view mode, then you can autofocus even with the 2x teleconverter, but unfortunately, if you put a teleconverter on this, most cameras are not able to autofocus with it. So in terms of image quality, this lens is sharp, really tack sharp, any aperture, any setting, no problem at all. It does have a little bit of vignetting if you're at an aperture of 5.6, but if you stop it down at f8, f11, the vignetting disappears completely. But most of the time anyway, it doesn't bother me because I tend to put the birds in the middle of the frame so I can crop it, and I get the middle of the frame, which has no vignetting, and it has, on any lens, the best image quality. So, but I find that this lens is sharp corner to corner. It's a great prime lens. And that brings us to the other thing. This is a prime lens, which means that it does not zoom in and out. So if you're new to wildlife photography or new to telephoto lenses, it might take quite a while to get used to finding a subject, because if you see something like a bird in a tree or something like that, and you take your camera and you go like this and you try to point it, if you're not used to it, chances are you're not even pointing close to the right direction. You're actually, instead of pointing to this tree, you're pointing to that tree. Just a couple of degrees like that can make a huge difference with a telephoto lens. But I've been practicing quite a lot with the 70-300 Tamron lens, and I'm used to finding targets quite easily now. So even when I put the 2x teleconverter, if I see a bird and I bring the camera up to my eye, usually I'm right on it, or if not, I'm at least on the right branch and I can just follow the branch to where the bird is. And one difficulty I have, I'm used to most of my lenses now have the image stabilization or Tamron's vibration compensation. So it's kind of weird having to focus and just do your composition without image stabilization for me. Because when you're holding this lens, as I say, just a tiny little bit of vibration is going to point the camera in a different direction, so when you're trying to compose, the image moves quite a lot around, and it makes it a little harder to compose your shot. And if you're doing manual focus, then you have to keep wondering, am I not focused, or is the camera movement just too much? Especially again when you use the 2x teleconverter with this, it's really insane. One thing that's nice about this lens compared to some of the other telephoto lenses from Canon is the weight of this is actually not so bad. I don't have the best back, and I've been shooting with this. Sometimes I would shoot for maybe 1 or 2 hours a day. I would just sit in front of my bird feeder and just keep the camera looking, and I don't really get too fatigued or anything like that. So if you're used to some of the other heavier lenses, even like the Tamron 24-70, it's already starting to be a little heavy. If you have a 70-200 mil lens, you're probably going to be able to jump to this 400 millimeter lens and not even notice the difference in weight. So that's one nice thing, that the aperture is 5.6, which means that they don't have to make as wide of a lens because of the aperture, and also the image stabilization, all those motors and all those electronics extras do add a lot of weight on other lenses. So that's one nice thing. This is quite easy to handhold. So if you want to take pictures of birds in flight and stuff like that, where you have to move a lot with your lens, this is a really great option. Even with a 2x teleconverter, I have no problem handholding this lens. And again, it's not just handholding it for a couple of shots, but actually handholding it for a couple of hours straight. Taking pictures with this lens is not an issue at all. So in the future, I look forward to trying other telephoto lenses. There's a couple of other ones that I'm interested in. There's the Canon 100 to 400 mil. That's definitely a great option with the image stabilization. But from what I hear, the image quality is not quite as nice as this 400mm L prime lens. And then there's the new Tamron 150 to 600mm VC lens, which I'm hearing really great reviews about. So those are three lenses that I would like to put head-to-head at some point. But this 400mm lens from Canon, it's a really good option. It's pretty lightweight for its focal length, and it's really solid build. The image quality is absolutely amazing, and I don't think anybody would ever regret trying this lens out. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please leave them in the box below. If you liked the video, please click like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.